as you've probably guessed, we're here to look at fitting passengers to our different vehicles in a lot of different scales. Whilst I've got double O gauge items here today, we do have passenger figures available in double O gauge, N gauge, and O gauge too. So the skills that you see here we'll be carrying out are applicable for all of those major scales. Have a look at our link in the description. There's quite a few different figures that you'll see there. I know they've already been on your screen for a couple of moments while we had the technical issues, but I'll actually get to describe them to you and you'll be able to understand me this time too. So this is just a small range of what we can offer from the likes of Pico, PD Marsh, Prizer, Bachmann Scenecraft. We have a lot of different figures available covering most of the major eras too. So after a little bit of a delay there, let's get stuck in. Let's get starting to fit these into our models. If you've already watched our sessions on fitting steam locomotive and diesel locomotive crews, it's pretty much broadly the same skills that you'll be seeing here today. So if you've got your tools ready, you'll know exactly where to get started. But for those who are watching for the first time, I'll still be covering some of the do's and do nots as part of our session today to show some of the best ways in fitting figures into your vehicles. I've already started disassembling this Hornby Mark 1 here. I'm using the loco tray that you can see. And I've removed the bogies, then I have unclipped the chassis, as you see here, just making sure it separates down into all of its major components. Finally, and the most important, we have the interior of the model itself, as we can see here. Everything else can be put to one side for now. We don't need that until we are reassembling our coach. So I'll just put that there for you and we will get a little bit of a closer look at this. I'll bring it up on my second camera that you can see here. So some really good questions coming through here from the likes of Richard Swiderski as well, asking regarding the colour of the seats on these particular vehicles. You can paint them, and to be honest, it's probably a video in its own right as to fitting the different colours to the seats, dependent on the era, the coach, and the items in question there. So that may be something we'll cover in a video in the future. If you are looking at changing these, we have a huge amount of acrylic and enamel paints available right now, which you can pick up and change some of the colours of the seats. I will look at making that into a future video, into amending the seat colours and what colours were appropriate depending on eras, operators, vehicle type, etc., etc. But it's a great suggestion there, Richard, and thank you for bringing it up. So we have a few different types of people that you can see here right now. I'll put those onto the screen that we see here. So we have seated people and we have standing people. Now you can put a good mix in the different vehicles there. I'll just get some of these PD Marsh figures ready. And for those who remember part one of our stream, you'll remember that I always recommend just having a little bit of a trial fit of our figures, just making sure that they fit in the coach when we put it back together, and of course that they look good in place too. So remembering how our interior goes, we have a brake second open coach here. So we have the half of the coach that you can see, and then we have the baggage area towards the rear of the model. We don't want to absolutely cram this full of passengers here today. And have a look again and do study these services that you are modelling, whether you want them full of commuters or, as we've got here, 3 people who look ready to be heading off on a little trip. So one problem you'll see immediately is the legs are in the way, unfortunately, and you'll find this quite often with a lot of the figures that come out there. Whilst they are fantastic for putting on things like park benches and maybe in full public view, once you start getting them into rolling stock, as you see here, you will need to do a bit of chopping and changing to get your figures to look appropriate due to how the seats are moulded into the model. That gives you a little bit of a bonus though, actually. It means we can use some of these standing passengers too. If we are going to cut them at the torso, it doesn't matter if they are seated or standing in their poses when we're putting them into coaches, because we'll be losing everything below the waist anyway. So it gives a huge amount of variety for different figures that you can include in your models. So for today's purposes, we'll be using our standing passengers and making them into sitting passengers. So we'll head back over to our camera on the workbench there. I'll just move some of these out of the way and we'll open up. I've got the Pico model scene pack here, which again is available from us if you do want to take a closer look at that on our site. I'll pour some of these out now and get them ready. And just moving our interior away for a second, as we don't want to cause any damage to that here. We'll get our trusty knife and we'll just make sure we have the right choice of place to make sure that we are cutting this figure down. Again, it can always work just to balance your figure alongside the vehicle itself to make sure they will be at the correct height when you put them into your coach. Otherwise, ready for a straight chop there. So you can do this with a Dremel. You can do this with other cutters too. But you can see there just a clean sweep on this particular passenger gives the surface there. So heading back to our method from before, just a tiny little bit of grey tack or something similar just to do a temporary location to make sure whether our passenger looks suitable and is correct, and indeed if we need to chop off any further items. Now there we are, he's sat in there. He's still a little tall, but for the purposes of today we'll leave him as tall as he is. And you'll see there that once the coach body is on, we'll have absolutely no issues making sure that we can see everything in there. I'll just put that on so you can see temporarily. Slide that into place. So you can just about see him there now inside the coach, sat down and in there ready to go too. So some other great tips coming through there. David's just mentioned you can use these Euron track cutters. I would recommend, as David does there too, to have a full separate pair of those if you're using them for cutting plastic parts such as this. Some of the figures, like the PD Marsh figures here, are white metal too, so you may be best with a Dremel or something similar for those particular figurines. So we get our second passenger here. We'll do another cut right at the waist there, making sure to do a good clean cut. And if we're affixing these permanently, which we will be doing here today, we just want to make sure we've got a good place for the glue to come onto. I'm going to lose everything below the waist there, just to make sure they have the full space for the connection. So we've got a nice clean cut. And again, just a little bit of grey tack to make sure that they look absolutely fine in our seats to start off with. Now, if you wanted to, you can finish there. That can be the end of the job. If you want to put your figures in temporarily, you can leave them with the grey tack. Now, bear in mind that if you do that, you may find that the grey tack is a lot more visible than any glue, whether it's super glue or PVA glue will be. You'll find that there is a little bit of an issue with how it looks there, but that may be something you're happy with. And at the same time, do bear in mind that they're more likely to come a little bit more undone over time too. If you're looking at fixing them in there at least semi-permanently, I really would go for something like Tacky Wax, which is a wax-based adhesive, and you can get rid of that using hot water too, or using a standard super glue or PVA glue, which we have many, many different varieties of available right now. For the purposes of today, I'm going to be using some super glue, so I will prepare our figures for that. So we'll head back to the inside of our coach. So I'll take those out and just make sure we remove all of the grey tack from the bottom there. We don't want that getting in there too. Sometimes, as you'll see, it can actually stick to the seats in place, so it's always good just to have a pair of tweezers or pliers where we can remove that. As we see here, that's come straight out and our coach is now ready to go. So I've just removed all the items we don't need here today. My golden rule for gluing, which I'm sure most of you are well aware of now after several videos where we've used glue, is always put your glue onto a little bit of scrap plastic or a small bag that you may have spare, so you don't get glue anywhere near any of your other models on your workbench, or you're not going to be left with any small glue marks. And then apply it with a cocktail stick. Never squeeze it straight out of the bottle. You may find that there's issues there then, and if you have it on the end of a cocktail stick, there's no way any more or any less can come out of that. So holding your figure either safely between your fingers or with a set of tweezers, we're just putting a tiny bit of glue on there. As ever, just remember that less is more when it comes to the glue. And then pretty quickly after that, we'll just put them into place in our coach. Just making sure that the glue bonds, so put them at a slight angle. You'll be able to see this in a second once they've dried, so they appear to be looking out of the window, or at least that's my excuse for how they are looking today. And it's great to do some little cameo poses such as this. You'll see here in the pack too, there's a pair of children there. You can get certain people in certain poses, so you really can start to recreate some stories inside your rolling stock too. Whether you're having maybe a trip out for a group of scouts, or indeed a businessman's meeting inside a coach with everyone wearing business suits and professional wear, or with some of the more unusual figures you can get in certain guises. You can have maybe military troop trains with some of the wartime figures that are available out there. I'm just going to bend that little bag back in so it makes sure it doesn't foul the parts. Or indeed some of the really unusual items that you've got. You can get some really unusual figures from the likes of Knock and other suppliers. So maybe you could have a train that's got fancy dress passengers in there too. The options are endless really, and with the amount of different items that we've got, you really can start to build up a lot of different options. Some great opportunities here as well with our standing passengers. Sometimes we don't have to have everyone sat down. We may have someone moving up and down the coach, or indeed some of the staff, such as the guard, inside the coach too. So we'll fit a standing passenger, maybe just passing, having a quick conversation with the passengers who are sat down. So this time they get to keep their legs intact. And in exactly the same way, it's just a very small amount of glue off the bottom of our cocktail stick, placing them exactly where we want them, allowing them to dry for a couple of seconds just to make sure they attach firmly to the plastic base. And you can see there now that we've got a little cameo scene starting already. Being talked to here, obviously he's not showing much interest as he's looking out of the window, and the chap here is, well, he doesn't know quite where to look really. So we've already started to create a little cameo scene on our layout. Some great other opportunities coming through there as well. People mentioning train spotters, camping coaches, other options that you can fit these passengers to. So after a couple of minutes just drying there, we'll just make sure they are permanently located by giving them a light tap. Then once you've got all your passengers inside, once you've painted your interior and seen the comments in the video there as well, that is something we'll cover in the future. I can see the potential popularity of that one there too. It's time to put the body back together. So this all clips straight back on and in, and we should then start to see our scene come alive inside the coach. So I'll put that body back on, and then I'll just bring that into the camera there for you. So I might have to tilt it a couple of times until we get it spot on. We can just about see in that compartment there now we have our 3 figurines in the coach, ready to go. And then you continue that method throughout the coach. You add further figures, you add the little cameos, you add the displays. The hardest bit really is making it look realistic. So you have passengers spread out through the coach. You don't have everyone sat at one end. You don't have everyone in one table and all the others empty, for example. Do have a look the next time you're on a train and see just how the passengers spread out through a coach. who's sat with who, whether you've got family groups, sole travelers on there too, and just replicate that in model form, whether it is a modern scene or whether it is a classic scene from the 1920s or 1930s. You can really start to build those together. And some models now are coming pre-fitted with passenger figures, and you can always enhance these by adding further people there too. So if you have a look at this one, the Mark II coach that I've got here, already has some figures inside the coaches, ready painted and ready fitted, but there's nothing stopping you opening this particular vehicle up and adding even more detail, maybe as we've said there on the video too, enhancing a lot of the table and seat colours in these particular vehicles, and just enhancing the quality and bringing the layouts to life. If we've got a locomotive with crew pulling a train full of passengers, it's suddenly got a purpose on a layout. You know that that train is heading somewhere and has a lot of passengers to deliver, rather than empty coaches moving around on your layout. And it really is as simple as we have shown it today, with just removing the body as per so. And we have got a video on our channel if you want to check out some more information and our how-to guides on removing bodies and chassis from items such as these to get inside, and then building up a little cameo, a little display. I'll just show you one last time all it takes to add someone in. So we'll add this small pair of children here. We'll get these into our train. So little bit of glue on the end of a cocktail stick, just making sure that we're not putting too much on. Just covering the feet, that's all they need. They don't need glue anywhere else on these particular vehicles. We'll just put our children down there next to this family group. Maybe they're heading off on a little train down to the seaside, heading down to one of those camping coaches that we've had mentioned there in the chat too. But they're already stuck. It only took a couple of seconds there with that super glue. And then you are just adding on more and more life into these particular vehicles. The more you add, obviously do depend on what is available. You can just about see those two kids in there now enjoying their ride in this Mark I coach. But it really is that simple for adding further details such as these. So if you do want to do some of these detail amendments yourself, every single thing I've shown you here today, is whether it's the passengers, the vehicles, the glue, the tacky wax, the whole lot, including the tools that you need, is available to order right now from hattons.co.uk. So do check that out. And there is more information on the link in the description if you'd like to find out a little bit more. Sorry again for the issues at the start of the stream there. These technical issues do happen sometimes, as you can imagine with doing live streams here. So sometimes the gremlins come out, but we still get to show you some great skills that you can learn to and enhance your model railways. So I'll do a little bit of post-production on that one in the editing studio to make it look good for everyone who's watching a little bit later. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed today's stream. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, including parts 1 and 2, showing you how to fit the steam locomotive crew and the modern image loco crew too. We've also got a lot more SkillsCast sessions, including how to do static grass, how to do laying track, laying roads on your layout, inspiration such as modeling steam engine sheds, dockside scenes, and more. We've got real railway profiles on there too, and of course, all the latest model railway news. So I hope you've enjoyed today's session. Don't forget to keep an eye on our channel for more videos like this, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.